Congratulations, Dr. Ben Carter." The applause roared like waves crashing on the shore, the spotlight beaming directly onto my younger brother's radiant face, who had just been appointed chief assistant of internal medicine at a top hospital in Houston. Everyone stood raising their glasses, smiling, as if they had just witnessed a monumental moment for our family. And there I was, sitting at the end of the table behind a row of white-draped chairs, holding a glass of water, as if reserving a seat for someone who would never show up. My mother leaned over, lightly touching my elbow, her voice soft as a breeze. "You sit at the end, okay? Next to Uncle Scott. It's a bit crowded here." I smiled. Not because I was happy, but because smiling was the easiest way to make everything seem fine. "I'm Rachel Carter, 36 years old, living in Austin, Texas. Not a doctor, not a lawyer, not a university professor. I was a firefighter for 17 years, rushing into flames no one else dared approach, saving people without ever asking their names. But in my family, that didn't matter. If you're reading this, maybe you've felt invisible in your own home. If so, leave a simple comment, I'm here. No need for long explanations. Just let me know you've existed the way I once did." My family never called me a failure. No one said it outright. They just stayed silent, nodded when I mentioned teaching survival skills to kids, and quickly changed the subject. They praised Ben loudly, abundantly, publicly. They posted pictures of Ben on Facebook, sharing every one of his achievements, while I was only mentioned as a footnote. Little Rachel's doing some camping programs in Austin. Once at my mother's birthday party, while everyone was talking about Ben's medical projects, I tried to join in. Last week, I taught a class of elementary kids how to escape a kitchen fire. One girl managed to pull her brother out after the lesson. People smiled politely. Then Uncle Scott raised his glass and said loudly, "Nice! But I bet you also taught them how to roast marshmallows properly, right?" More laughter, this time with clinking glasses. No one asked further. I fell silent again. Truth be told, I was used to it. Sophie. In the bottom drawer by my bedside is an old envelope containing a black and white photo me in singed firefighter gear carrying an unconscious man out of a collapsing house. It was the fire in Bridger, Montana, 2017. I saved 8 people that night. It was also the night I thought I'd die. I suffered third-degree burns on my left arm and shoulder. It took 11 months of therapy to hold a spoon again, but when I returned, no one asked what I'd been through. My mother only said, "What are you going to do next? Why not come back and get a stable office job?" I didn't mention the state's Medal of Honor, nor the $300,000 the government awarded after the story spread. I quietly left the fire service, mailed back my badge, and moved to Austin. Since then, I've taught survival, first aid, and escape skills to kids and communities. It's not glamorous work, but it brings me peace. At least until someone in my family asks, "Are you still doing that campfire class?" Sazen. The night of the gala, I didn't plan to go. But my mother called saying the whole family would be there and we can't be without you. I wore the simplest black dress I owned, stood at the edge of the ballroom, clutching a glass of water amid the endless chatter and laughter. When Ben stepped onto the stage to receive his award, the spotlight shone directly on him. For me, the light passed by and faded. I used to think that if I just kept trying, I'd be recognized. That if I kept saving people one day, they'd see me. But no. In my family, saving a life didn't compare to having your name on a medical board's honor roll. Have you ever felt like that? Doing the right thing, but being seen as the odd one out? Let me know in the comments. Maybe I'm not the only one who feels this way. I still remember the last time my father called. He didn't ask about my health or my work. He just said, "You still doing that summer camp escape course or whatever?" I replied, "I teach fire safety and escape skills to kids, Dad." He chuckled. "Well, I bet those kids learned how to grill sausages safely." After that call, I sat for hours staring at the medal in my safe. Not because I regretted anything, but because I wondered if they'd ever truly see me beyond the role of the oddball sister without prestigious degrees, not living by their script. I used to hope that staying silent and persevering would be enough. But then I realized silence isn't humility. It's an invisible cage keeping me trapped in a home where no one saw me as a person. The reason I'm writing this isn't to complain. I want you, the one reading these lines, to know there's someone else who's felt pushed to the sidelines of their own life story. And if you've been that person, you're not alone. Tell me where you are and why you've read this far. Just one word, present. Sometimes being seen even through a single comment can be the first step to healing. I'll tell you something my family never knew. The man I pulled from that fire, the one I thought would never wake up, not only survived, but became the first person to truly see me after years of being invisible. And he turned out to be Ben's boss. Not every wound bleeds. Not every burn leaves a scar on the skin. Some pains smolder in memory, clinging like smoke in your lungs, flaring up every time you hear a siren in the distance. I still remember that night vividly. Bridger, Montana, September 17th, 2017. No rain, the air dry as old newspaper, the forest cracking, as if waiting for a match to strike. I got the call at 10:14 p.m. A cabin north of Bridger was ablaze. At least 5 people were trapped inside, according to initial reports. I didn't think much. I just remember tightening my mask straps and jumping into the truck with the team. In my 17 years as a firefighter, I'd seen many houses collapse, but that night, it was the first time I heard a roof groan like a human. The cabin was engulfed in flames. Smoke billowed from the eaves, carrying charred wood. Everything rose like a spear piercing the night. I don't recall everything I did, only the shout, "People are still inside," and running straight in without a second thought. A woman, 2 children, an elderly man, then a group of teenagers huddled at the end of a hallway. I pulled, pushed, dragged. There was nothing but my ragged breaths and the crackling of breaking wooden floors beneath my feet. The last person I found was a middle-aged man face down on the floor, his jacket half burned. I didn't know who he was. I didn't care. I only knew he was alive. I hoisted him up, straining to carry the weight of a body going limp by the second. "Don't sleep," I shouted through my mask. "I won't let you die here." And I didn't let him die, but I nearly did. As my foot crossed the cabin's threshold, it exploded behind me. We collapsed to the ground, choking on smoke burning. My mask slipped off, and I barely managed to shield him before passing out. Svasin. I woke 3 days later in a small-town hospital. 3rd-degree burns on my left arm and shoulder. Minor lung damage. The doctor said I was lucky not to have inhaled a lethal dose of toxic gas. Lucky. They called it luck. The next 11 months were a blur of physical therapy, broken sleep, and screams in the middle of the night that made me apologize to the entire rehab ward. I relearned how to hold a spoon, open a doorknob, turn my head, without hearing the crackle of burning wood in my mind. My mother didn't visit. Neither did my father. Ben sent one text. "Heard you're okay. Let me know when you're back in Montana." I didn't reply. One person called. Alma Rivera, my old teammate who called me Fire Sis during my first year on duty. She cried over the phone when I told her I was considering leaving the fire service. Then she said, "Rachel, you didn't just walk out of the fire. You pulled a whole mountain with you." I smiled. For the first time in months, that smile didn't come with tears. Ski. I didn't leave the fire service the way most do. No farewell party. No bouquet of flowers. I mailed back my badge, no note attached. A week later, I moved to Austin. Started over. From zero. I rented a small apartment above an auto shop. It had an electric stove, a window overlooking the highway, and an old sofa gifted by a kind neighbor. No one in Austin knew I'd made the front page of newspapers. No one knew about Bridger, and I liked it that way. I spent 6 months rewriting a survival training curriculum for teens. I named my small center Ember Initiative, because even when a fire dies, it leaves embers hot enough to spark something new. And because I was someone who walked out of those embers. Looking back, I don't think I gave up. I just changed how I fought. From saving people in flames to teaching them how to avoid being burned in the first place. I'd seen too many kids who didn't know how to buckle a seatbelt, wrap their hand to break a door, or call emergency services. If I couldn't run into fires anymore, I'd teach others how to run out of them. And slowly, the kids started giving me nicknames. Miss Rach, Ash, Lady, Fire Saver. I laughed every time I heard them. Not because they were right, but because I felt I was no longer invisible. Hius. If you've ever had a moment where you nearly lost everything, health, job, faith, share it with me in the comments. No need for details, just write, I know that feeling. I read every line, and sometimes knowing someone else has fallen is the first step to standing back up. I didn't know who the man I saved that night was. Not until last year's gala when he, Everett Lynn, looked at me and said, "It was you. You saved me." I hadn't heard his voice since that night, but I remembered those eyes. The way he looked at me as if I was real. I spent 17 years running into fires, and nearly a year learning to breathe, without hearing wood crackle in my head. But one person calling my name correctly in a room full of people, made it all feel worthwhile again. Smo. We often think we have to keep pushing, stay strong, never stop. But no one says that sometimes standing still is also a way to survive. Especially when standing amid ruins and saying I'm still alive. I left the fire service. But the fire never left me. It's in the scars on my skin, in the way I can't smell smoke without my hands trembling, and in the way I look into the eyes of kids learning to survive. But the strange thing is a different kind of fire started burning in me. Not fierce, but steady. Like a hearth in a home where someone's waiting for you to come back. I don't like parties. Especially not fancy galas where people carry practiced gazes that size you up from head to toe. But that day my mother called, her voice firm. "You should come, Rachel. The whole family will be there. We can't be without you." Her words were like a tap on a long, cracked eggshell inside me. I knew it wasn't about making me happy, but about filling the seat next to my brother for the perfect family picture. I agreed. Not because I wanted to, but because I was tired of saying no. The gala was held at the Paragon Hotel, a lavish place with mirrored elevators and chandeliers like upside-down crowns. I wore a classic black dress, simple, no jewelry. In my purse was an invitation not addressed to me, but to guests of the Carter family. As I stepped into the hall, I saw Ben standing in a circle of colleagues. Perfectly tailored suit, navy tie sharp, and confident gaze, as if the room was built to celebrate his presence. My mother stood nearby holding my father's hand, who tirelessly introduced Ben to every guest, as if he were the family's ultimate upgrade. I planned to find a spot near the corner, but then my mother saw me. She quickly walked over, her hand lightly on my shoulder, as if adjusting my dress, but really steering me elsewhere. "Stand here, okay? It's closer to the buffet. Oh, and don't say anything weird in front of Director Lin. He's very particular." I nodded. I always nod. "Sadieu." The party began with long speeches. Thank yous, achievement numbers, perfectly timed applause. I sat quietly holding my water glass, staring through the large glass window toward the garden. My mind wasn't there. It was stuck in the cries for help from years ago in the flickering flames no one remembered, until I heard his voice. "Excuse me, your name is—" I turned. A man with graying hair, tall eyes squinting, as if trying to recall something distant. He looked at me not as a guest, but as if he'd just seen something unbelievable. Were you in Bridger 2017? I froze. 1,000 thoughts raced through my mind, but my body was paralyzed. He stepped closer, his voice hoarse with emotion. "You're the one who pulled me out of that cabin. I remember your eyes, your voice. You said, 'Don't sleep, I won't let you die here.' It was you, wasn't it?" All sound seemed to compress. All eyes turned toward us. Ben was stunned. My parents turned their heads as if jolted from a movie without subtitles. "She saved my life," he said loudly. "I'm Everett Lynn. I'm alive because of her." No one laughed. No applause. Just a heavy silence, as if the room was struggling to process the revelation. I don't know how I breathed in that moment. Only that my hands trembled not from fear, but from memories flooding back like fire over wooden beams. Hooey. Later, I found a quiet corner near the exit. I needed air, but then Ben approached. He no longer had his confident air. His eyes wavered between shock and confusion. "Why didn't you say anything? Is it true? Was it you?" I looked at my brother as if seeing a stranger. "You never asked." Ben opened his mouth, then closed it, as if he had no script to handle the situation. Soon after, my mother appeared. She said nothing about the fire, didn't ask about my health, didn't apologize for years of silence. She only asked, "Do you still have that money? Ben's research project is entering a critical phase." "Just a small portion." Her question hit me like a cold stone. Not because of the money, but because of the timing. Because they only came back when they saw my worth. If you've ever had someone remember you only when they needed something, comment, "I've been there." No need for names, no need for long stories. I understand. Spapai. I walked out of that fire years ago. But now I realized another fire was still smoldering in the way the people closest to me could make me feel insignificant. I left the gala early. On the way home, I didn't cry. I wasn't angry. I just felt empty. Like when you give everything and get back a blank stare. In my pocket was a short note from Everett Lynn. No address, just a handwritten line. "You don't need a spotlight to shine. I owe you a thank you. See you later." All praise has an expiration date, and some praise is born not to acknowledge, but to open a carefully disguised negotiation. 3 days after the gala, my mother called. No beating around the bush. This Sunday, we're throwing a celebration for you. Your father booked a restaurant. There's even a banner. Wear something nice, not your campfire clothes. I laughed into the phone, not because I was happy, but because I heard what she didn't say. It wasn't to celebrate me. It was to celebrate an opportunity. The chance to make the Carter family image even more perfect now with a silent hero. Sihor. The restaurant was Italian-style amber lights pouring down like honey, making everything seem warm and intimate, except for me. I arrived on time, wearing a cream sweater and black slacks. Light makeup, just enough not to be remarked upon. As I entered, all eyes turned to me, but not because they saw me, because they wanted to ensure I looked good enough to tell others, "That's Ben's sister. She's all right." On the long table was a handwritten sign, "Welcome the Carter family's beloved daughter, the true hero of Bridger." There were flowers, wine, twinkling lights, and plenty of smiles that didn't reach the eyes. Suz. The party unfolded as I expected. People asked questions, took photos, recounted the gala story as if they'd known it all along. My mother told aunts and uncles about my honorary certificate, forgetting she'd never asked about it before. Midway through, Ben stood clinking his glass with mine. "You kept this quiet so well. I'm proud to have a sister like you." I nodded, didn't respond. I knew the praise was genuine, but it was only allowed to surface after someone else validated me first. Suze. After dessert, my mother pulled me to a corner of the table. Her voice low, sweet like syrup, but heavy like stone. "Do you still have that reward money? I mean, now that you're recognized, it's a good time to do something big. Ben's applying for an immune graft research grant, but the budget's a bit short." I looked at her, not surprised, but something in my chest tightened. The feeling that I wasn't a beloved daughter, but a newly discovered bank account. I replied softly, "How much does Mom want?" Her eyes lit up, but she tried to restrain it. "Not much. 20,000, just to get started." I nodded, then added, "Fine. But on one condition from now on, no one in the family mentions the rest of the money. No hints, no jokes, no questions. It's not family property. It's mine. And I'll only contribute if I feel respected." My mother nodded, smiled, but I knew that smile wasn't whole. That night, back in my small Austin apartment, I transferred the exact amount promised. Not a dollar more. I didn't feel regret, but I didn't feel relieved either. I sat by the window watching the headlights of cars on the highway, wondering if I hadn't walked into that cabin, hadn't saved Everett Lynn, hadn't been named at the gala, would I ever have been invited to sit at the main table at today's party? What do you think? Have you ever felt valued only after doing something that made others look good by association? If so, comment. I know that feeling. I want to read your story. I used to think family love was unconditional, but then I realized in some families the condition is prestige, performance, the ability to make others proud when they say your name. At that party, I was the hero, but a hero they'd just memorized to recite correctly. As Ben walked me out, he put a hand on my shoulder, saying softly, "Don't worry, I'll use that money wisely. And if you need me to do anything, just say..." I smiled faintly. "Thanks. If I need you, I'll call. But only if..." Diaz. That night, I didn't open the safe. I didn't look at the metal. But I dreamed of the cabin. Not the fire. But the moment I held a stranger and heard his faint breath under the mask. A real sound. Not fake. Not calculated. Not every cut pierces the skin. Some slice quietly wrapped in laughter, praise, and feigned affection. By the time you realize you're bleeding, it's all too clear who's holding the knife. I started to suspect just a week after the celebration party. A former student sent me an Instagram story. It was Ben at a high-end lounge in Vegas, holding a flaming cocktail surrounded by dim lights and club music. The caption, "Work hard, burn bright." I clicked on his profile. The next post was at a poker table. Another at a pool with his new girlfriend wearing designer sunglasses, captioned, "Life is for living beautifully." Not a single mention of research. No lab, no papers, no patients. I sat still, staring at the screen. Next to me was the receipt for the $20,000 transfer. The exact amount I thought I'd use to do the right thing. I texted Ben, no accusations. "You're still working on the project, right?" He read it. No reply. 3 days later, I ignored a missed call from my mother. An hour later, everything exploded. An anonymous Reddit post appeared in the confession subreddit. Title: "My sister was a firefighter, now hoards $300,000 and refuses to help when family needs it most." I read every word, my eyes burning. It described a sister famous for one act of bravery, now living reclusively and selfishly indifferent while her brother faced financial crisis. No names, but enough details for anyone who followed the gala to recognize me. The comments, hundreds of shares, outrage analysis. A cold-hearted sister, a one-time hero, a lifelong villain. $300,000 for what to teach campfire tricks. Have you ever been slandered by your own family? Betrayed so shockingly you couldn't even scream? If so, comment. I know that feeling. We shouldn't have to endure silence forever. A week later, it was a whirlwind. 2 parents pulled their kids from my classes. 3 others sent emails citing personal reasons for pausing. A local school abruptly ended our partnership. I was called to a meeting with the board of the survival center I founded. They spoke gently, but their eyes didn't hide their doubt. Rachel, we trust you, but there's too much noise right now. The local paper's been calling. We need to reassess the center's image. I nodded. No defense. No tears. But inside, something was crumbling with the ticking of the clock. That night, I didn't eat. Didn't open my laptop. I just sat in the dark, clutching the small box with my medal and a copy of the uncashed $300,000 check. I'd kept it as proof of something. Now it felt like evidence of a crime I didn't commit. My mother didn't call. My father didn't text. Ben said nothing. No one stood by me. Must. 4 days later, I got an anonymous email with a link to a local blog. Title: From Flames to Facade. When a hero becomes heartless. The profile picture was me carrying the man out of the cabin years ago. Edited next to a photo of Ben looking sad, captioned, "Brother pleads, sister turns away." I looked at it and felt empty. Not angry, not hurt, just empty. If you've ever been publicly misunderstood, or worse, cast as the villain by your own family, share it. No need for length. Just one line. I was framed. You're not alone. I wanted to call my mother, but I didn't know where to start. What had I done wrong? I stayed silent, helped set clear conditions, lived authentically. And what did I get in return? One morning, I got a message from a former student. "Miss, I don't believe them. You taught me how to stay calm when people yell. I just want to say thank you." I broke down. The first time since the Bridger fire. Not from weakness, but because I knew I still had a spark in this smoke. Soon. I started writing everything down, documenting every detail, saving evidence. I hired an old friend, a cybersecurity expert, to trace the Reddit post. Every arrow pointed to one IP, one account, one computer. Ben. Yes. I haven't confronted him. Not yet. But something in me has changed. I'm no longer the girl hoping to be seen. I'm the woman who will stand up and make others face the truth. I once thought the fiercest fire of my life was the Bridger blaze where I nearly died saving others. But that night, in a quiet Austin apartment, I discovered something more: searing violation. Not fire, but the fear of being stalked in the one place you thought was safe. I got home around 9 p.m. after a survival skills session at Ember Initiative. Exhausted, but my mind lighter thanks to a few thank yous from the kids. The key felt heavy in the lock, strange. When the door opened, a cold draft hit me, making me pause. Not because of the weather. Everything inside was unnaturally silent. The lights were off. But I felt something had changed. I flicked on the light. My heart skipped a beat. Drawers gaped open. Desk contents spilled out, papers scattered. My small apartment had been ransacked, but selectively, not typical theft. The TV was untouched. My expensive purse was ignored. Only things tied to me were targeted, especially my safe. The safe was open. No signs of forced entry, as if someone knew the code. Inside the envelope with the copy of the $300,000 check was gone. Next to it was a crumpled note, handwritten in black ink. "If you don't know how to share, someone else will do it for you. Have you ever felt violated to your core? Not because of lost possessions, but because of lost intangible safety. If you've experienced that, leave a comment. I've trembled in my own home. I'll read everyone." I called the police. They came quickly, surveyed the scene, asked about enemies' recent tensions. I mentioned Ben, not accusing, just a hunch. But they only took notes, left a business card, and said the usual. "We'll investigate. Call if you have new leads." No signs of forced entry. No broken cameras. No physical evidence. But I knew. Someone had walked into my home through the front door. That night, I didn't sleep. Lights blazed. I sat with my back against the wall, gripping pepper spray, eyes unblinking. The sound of wind hitting the window made me flinch. The smell of ash from that fire years ago returned in my memory. I heard the roof collapse, people screaming, my teeth chattering from cold after being saved. PTSD doesn't knock. It only needs a crack, and it found one. Spox. The next morning I went to the center with dark circles under my eyes. I didn't hide it, just said some personal stuff. But Alma, my old teammate and only remaining close friend, looked at me pressing. What happened? I told her. Left nothing out. She was silent for a long time, then put her hand on mine. You need to fight back. You can't keep defending forever. I nodded. But fight back, how, against whom? Cease. A week passed. No more incidents, but the darkness in me grew thicker. I checked my locks 3 times every night. Taped over exposed outlets, slept in fits. Students dwindled. More questioning emails arrived. Then one Sunday afternoon I got an email from Everett Lynn. Subject, we owe you more than a medal. My hands shook as I read. Rachel, I've read what's been happening to you. I don't believe a word of those articles. I've hired an independent investigation team. There are things you should see. If you're ready, meet me Old Coffee Shop on 9th Street Tuesday morning. I read it 4 times. Not out of doubt, but hope. Sasim. Tuesday, I sat at the coffee shop clutching a latte. Everett arrived on time. No tie, no CEO vibe, just a man who'd been saved and now came to save in return. He placed a file on the table. No small talk. Inside were security camera images from my building's hallway. Ben was seen letting a stranger in the night my apartment was broken into. Copies of forged transfer documents. Data tracing the Reddit post to Ben's laptop. I stayed silent. Not sure if I should be shocked or relieved to finally have proof. Everett said softly, We can sue. The charges are serious trespassing, impersonation, defamation, reputational sabotage. I looked out at the street. Wind flipped the tablecloths on the patio. But if I do that, I said I'll burn the last tie with my family. Everett didn't smile, didn't console, just placed his hand on the table. You're not the one burning. They've been burning it for a long time. You're just stepping out of the smoke. If you've ever stood at a crossroads like me between justice and family ties, leave a line. I've stood in the fire too. We're stronger when we're not alone. That night, I returned home, no longer afraid. I opened my laptop, began drafting an official statement, saved every piece of evidence, emailed a lawyer, not for revenge, but for the truth. Some wounds you think have healed until someone touches them lightly, not painful, but startling enough to make your heart clench. That morning, a 16-year-old boy made me freeze mid-lesson like that. After months of upheaval, Ember Initiative was running again, slowly but steadily. A few old students returned, quiet eyes, apologetic, but they came back. I didn't ask. They didn't need to explain. We met again without needing many words. A fire, even when cooled leaves warmth behind. That morning I was teaching a new group how to use portable fire extinguishers. The early fall breeze made our shouts crisp and resonant. The boy arrived late. Gray hoodie backpack slung over one shoulder, eyes hesitant. Sorry, miss, I'm Nathan. I nodded. Handed him a helmet. Thought he was just another new student until the session ended and Nathan approached. Miss Rachel. Yes. He opened his backpack, pulling out a faded, color-blurred photo printed on plain paper. An old photo, very old. I looked, and nearly dropped my clipboard. It was me drenched in sweat, face smudged with ash firefighter helmet on arms, cradling a child wrapped in a rescue blanket. A press photo. Bridger 2017. I don't remember your face, Nathan said, his voice strangely calm. But my mom kept this photo. She said, You carried me out of that burning cabin. I was only 8. I swallowed hard. My palms sweated. My mom said he continued, his eyes shining with something beyond gratitude, that if it weren't for you, I wouldn't be here learning to save others. I signed up for this class to be like you. Heats. I turned away. Didn't want Nathan to see my eyes redden. I'd lived years feeling invisible. Doing things no one knew, then shrinking when misunderstood. But standing before that boy, I realized the fire I carried didn't die. It was being passed on. If you've ever felt your efforts were futile, leave a comment someone still remembers. Because sometimes the person you least expect carries the clearest memory of you. Phrase. That afternoon, Nathan emailed me a thank you, attaching a short video, him practicing CPR. In it, he said, "I want to save someone like you saved me." I watched it over and over, not for the praise, but to affirm to myself I once mattered. The slander against me gradually faded. Negative posts were removed or countered by former students. A mother who'd pulled her child during the controversy wrote an apology asking to re-enroll. Her letter read, "We believed what we read, but now we believe what we see." A child came home, knowing how to call for help, how to bandage his sister's fall, because of what you taught. I printed the letter, folded it, placed it next to the old Bridger frame, 2017. Sigh. The next week, a group of former students returned, volunteering to clean the storage, reorganize the training yard. They said little, just brought warmth like early winter sun. One boy whispered, "We don't know the whole story, but if anyone's worth trusting, it's you." I just smiled. My heart felt tons lighter. Sussia. That weekend, Everett stopped by the center with coffee and a box of pastries. He watched me check fire equipment, then quietly placed a hand on my shoulder. "You know fires can be put out, but the one who carries the fire can't be." I turned, seeing his gaze not just of someone saved, but of someone who wanted to keep that fire alive with me forever. That evening I sat at my desk, soft yellow light kids' laughter echoing through training footage. I opened an old document, the center's founding mission. The first page read, "Mission pass on skills to preserve life and courage to keep living." I added a small line below, "and to keep embers from dying, just because no one saw them." See, if you've ever felt extinguished because someone didn't believe you shone enough, leave a comment. I'm still burning. I'll read and reply because I believe we don't need applause to shine. There's a kind of silence much like death, not of the body, but of trust. I lived in it for a long time until I decided if the truth doesn't speak for itself, I'll speak for it. Not a word. It began on a Monday morning, Austin, drizzling lightly, but my heart brighter than any sunny day. Everett Lynn sat across from me in a quiet Hyde Park cafe. Rolled up sleeves, black coffee eyes, serious but not cold. I contacted someone, he said, placing a small USB and a thin file before me. "You need to know everything." I took them, my hands steady. For the first time in months, I wasn't afraid of the truth. Inside were chat logs from Ben's laptop, edited Reddit post files, security footage of Ben letting a stranger into my building the night of the break-in. Even a bank statement showing Ben used my transferred money for VIP casino services in Vegas. This. I took a deep breath. "Will destroy him." "No," Everett replied softly. "He chose that himself. You're just bringing light to it." See. The next week I met my lawyer, for the first time, a petite woman named Clara with eyes sharp as lasers. At our first meeting, she said bluntly, "If you just want your honor back, we have ways. If you want justice, you'll have to go further." I looked straight into Clara's eyes. "I want the truth, and I want it recorded with the right names, the right people." I officially filed a lawsuit against Ben Carter for intentional defamation, financial document forgery, theft and destruction of personal property, exploiting personal reputation for financial gain. That same day, the court confirmed receipt of the case. I received a summons for a preliminary hearing set for 3 weeks later. If you've ever faced a moment of choosing between silence and standing up, leave a comment. I chose the light. Because sometimes knowing we're not alone gives us the courage to step out of the dark. Fainsayer. My family, of course, wasn't happy. My mother called the next day. "Are you really taking your brother to court?" "I'm not taking anyone anywhere, Mom. I'm just leading the truth to where it belongs. This will embarrass us." "What face, Mom?" "The one everyone turned away when I was dragged through the mud." I didn't wait for her reply. For the first time, I hung up first. Seeds. The night before the court date, I couldn't sleep. Not from fear of losing, but because I'd already won the moment I decided not to hide anymore. I reopened thank you letters from students' old training photos, then paused at the picture Nathan sent the boy I saved, now standing firmly in the training yard holding a fire extinguisher. I touched the photo, whispering, "Tomorrow, I'm not speaking just for me." Austin City Courthouse, 9 a.m., Tuesday. Unusually cold, but I arrived early, wearing a navy coat, hair neatly tied, no heavy makeup. I had nothing to hide anymore. Ben sat at the defendant's table. He avoided my eyes, face pale. My mother sat behind him, clutching her purse, her gaze unclear anger or shame. Everett sat in the front row, nodding lightly as I walked in. Clara, my lawyer, opened with what happened the night my apartment was broken into crime scene photos. The threatening note, missing documents. Next came evidence from Ben's device's Reddit post source code, original file names, draft screenshots. The defense had no clear rebuttal. Just vague excuses. Ben was under work pressure, he doesn't recall writing anything, it was just a prank. But the truth doesn't need many words to stand firm. Then it was my turn. The judge invited me to the stand. I stepped forward. No notes needed. Everything I said had lived in me for months. My name is Rachel Carter. I didn't come here to tear apart a family, my own family. But I also can't let others repeat the wounds that once killed a part of me. I took a deep breath. After I refused to provide more financial support, Ben, my brother, spread false rumors, forged evidence, causing me to lose my job, the community's trust, and nearly myself. I looked at him. But I don't need my brother imprisoned. I'm not here for revenge. I'm here because I need the truth. Not just for me, but for everyone hurt in silence. Stop. The courtroom was silent. The judge nodded lightly. The hearing continued for another 45 minutes, listening to Ben's lawyers' responses. They presented financial statements, confirmed his ongoing psychological recovery, and showed willingness to cooperate. Finally, the judge ruled. Benjamin Carter's medical license suspended for 2 years. Fined for reputational damage and professional loss to the plaintiff. Mandated to continue psychological treatment. No prison, no handcuffs, but an end to a chain of wrongs. Fasadiem. Ben bowed his head silent. My mother for the first time turned to me, nodding slightly. No apology, but no avoidance either. My father stood, started to say something, then stopped. It didn't need much. For me, that silence was acknowledgement. That afternoon, I returned to Ember Initiative. The kids ran down the hallway, their footsteps the liveliest sound I'd ever heard. A former student, Mason, waited for me in the backyard. He handed me a letter. Miss Rachel, I still remember how you taught us to breathe through a smoke mask. I thought it was a small lesson, but now I know you taught me to live. I smiled. The letter was smudged with sweat, not tears. For the first time I didn't cry. I was at peace. I sat at the small desk in the back office of Ember Initiative, looking out at the yard where kids shouted during a mock firefighting drill. Their running steps, their laughter swept away the dust of the past. In my hand was the final paper, the transfer receipt. The rest of the reward money from years ago, untouched until now, was officially used to expand Ember. We'd open branches in 3 rural areas where kids lack access to learning survival skills, facing fires, disasters, or even their own fears. I didn't use the money to reclaim honor. I used it to restore faith for those who never got to hear you did it right. Austin's spring came early this year. Not vibrant, not loud, just quiet, like a hand gently placed on your shoulder when you're about to fall. That morning, as I checked the equipment list, a boy walked in. About 12, curly hair, holding a crumpled old photo. Miss Rachel, he mumbled. I nodded. He handed me the photo. It showed a child being carried out of a burning house. My face blurred with smoke and light, but my arms tightly held that boy. My mom said, "It was you in the photo. I don't remember much, just your voice through the mask. Don't sleep. I won't let you die." I froze. For the first time in years, the Bridger fire memory returned without overwhelming me. It was no longer a haunt. It was a root. Now I want to learn to save others, he said. I smiled, saying nothing. No need. Some moments the heart understands before words. If you've ever had a teacher not famous, not medaled, just someone who helped you stand up, share their name in the comments. I believe gratitude should be spoken aloud. Sikir. A few days later, Everett came to the center with a paper bag of breakfast and a small wooden box. I know you don't need a grand wedding or a fairy tale proposal, but you need truth, and this is all I have. Sincerity, time, and... He opened the box. Inside was a simple silver ring, no gems, no flash. Just a small engraved symbol inside a flame. You saved me from fire once. Now I want to kindle a different fire with you, warm and safe. I laughed then, nodded. Not because I needed to be loved, but because I knew I was strong enough to be loved, without sacrificing myself anymore. Fee. On the opening day of Ember's new branch, I stood on a rough wooden platform behind a repainted old sign. Ember survived to live kindly. No media, no red ribbon, no scripted MC, just real faces. Among them, a gray-haired woman holding a little girl. She approached, handing me a tray of cookies. Miss Carter, I once believed what they wrote about you. I didn't say it, but I turned away. I stayed silent. She placed the tray on the table, looking up. I'm sorry. That was all. And enough. Spoor wise. Late that afternoon, Everett arrived, still holding iced coffee. The kind I hate, but he keeps ordering by mistake. He said, I'll learn to tell mocha from Americano. like learning to tell angry fire from warm fire. You've taught me both. I laughed. Didn't argue, because he was right. Sigh. At day's end, as I packed up equipment, a group of young students ran up. Miss Rachel, if we become firefighters, will you remember our names? I knelt to their eye level. If you remember to use your hands to save people, not to push them down, I'll remember. That night, I opened the safe that had been broken into months ago. Inside now were just a few things: my mother's wedding ring, a scrap of my old firefighter uniform, and a note I'd written but never read aloud. Not everyone has to be a hero, but everyone can be a fire. Small, steady, enough to light someone's path in the dark. That winter came late, but its chill seeped quickly into Ember's old brick walls. The space around was solemnly quiet, as if the world held its breath for something about to unfold. Today was the opening of the first winter survival course at Ember Initiative since its rural expansion. We welcomed nearly 30 students, kids, teens, and a few adults learning to protect themselves and others in harsh nature. I was teaching the kids to start a fire with flint when a 9-year-old boy, skinny, wearing oversized wool gloves, stared at me and asked, "Miss Rachel, are you still afraid of fire?" I paused, looking up. The light from the new fire flickered in his eyes, curiosity, not doubt. I smiled, not dodging. "Everyone's afraid, kid. But if you know what it burns, you'll know what to keep safe." I said it not just for him, but for me, the me who'd been scorched by cold stares by a decade of silence in the house called family. I once thought I had to choose between honor and family, but it turned out all I needed to choose was the truth, and stand by it. After the trial, after Ben's public confession, the silence in my family was no longer punishment, but a necessary pause for the truth to sink in. My mother sent a letter short, no excuses. "We didn't see you. Now we're learning to look again." Little by little. I didn't reply, but I kept it next to a photo of me holding Ben as a baby, his face smudged with birthday cake clutching my pinky. Some things don't need erasing, just relearning how to read. On the third day of the course, I got an invitation to be the keynote speaker at a national survival skills education conference. I'd turned down such events before, not because I feared speaking, but because I worried the spotlight might make me forget why I started. This time, I said yes, because I knew I wasn't speaking to be seen anymore. I was speaking so others like me, quietly enduring, knew they have a place and deserve to be heard. Sighs. Everett picked me up from the center after class. He stepped out of the car with old leather gloves and 2 cups of hot cocoa. As I opened the car door, he handed me a small envelope. "An invitation from Montana," he said. "They're holding a memorial for that fire. They want the person who saved 8 lives to speak." I opened the letter. The paper was slightly creased, my name in bold type, but I only saw one line handwritten at the bottom. "We remember you, and we're grateful." I gripped the envelope, not for fame, not for reward, but because finally my memory was returned to itself untainted by others' distorted retellings. Boy. The next morning, a former student stopped by Ember. She was the first to withdraw when the slander spread. Today, she stood before me, not apologizing with words, but with action. "My mom sent pumpkin bread," she said. "She said this time it doesn't need to be sweet. Just real." I took the box, placed it on the table. She didn't leave, then turned back. "I want to come back to class if you still have room." I nodded. Not for forgiveness, but because I believe everyone deserves to learn again skills and trust alike. That day, as we cleaned up the winter training camp, a 10-year-old girl tugged my hand. "Miss Rachel, can I open a little Ember in my town someday?" I knelt down asking, "Why do you want to?" She bit her lip, then whispered, "Because I saw my friend's house burn." Her mom cried. "I want to learn to do something, instead of just standing there." I placed a hand on her shoulder. "Then you've already started." When night fell, I sat alone by the fire. No more retreating or burning in my chest. Just warmth. I thought of everything. The nights I was sidelined at family dinners. The first time someone called me a hero without sarcasm. The chilling note left in my apartment, and the simple proposal with a flame-etched ring. And I smiled. Not because everything was settled, but because I knew I didn't need settled to live kindly. I just needed to stop burning for what no longer deserved to be kept. If you've walked with me through this journey, thank you for listening. Not just with your ears, but with your heart. The story I've told isn't just mine. It's a mirror for those overlooked standing behind others' spotlights, hurt in their own families. But in the end, what matters isn't how we were burned, but how we chose to rise and rekindle our own fire. I believe gratitude always finds its way back. Courage doesn't need to be proven with feats, but with the persistence to live kindly amid what tries to break us most. If you see a piece of yourself in this story, leave a comment. I read every word you write. Don't forget to follow the channel to keep walking with me not just in my story, but in the fires you're holding in your hands. You are not alone.